Hi, my name is TheRealPunchee and welcome to my first video talking about a so-called food chain for Rogue Lineage. I wanted to visually display how each class interacts with each other, but it proved to be more difficult than I thought. This time I'll be discussing every single Uber class in K and voicing my opinion on each of them. First of all, this is just my opinion, so don't feel like you need to follow this video as a guideline when you play. I'm not really a fan of making tier lists because I've not played all the classes in the game, and it's really hard for me to say which class is the best in the game. In most games, there's a rock, paper, scissors style of countering, such as rushing classes will do good against support characters, and etc. Rogue Lineage is similar, but people could claim that one class is more unbalanced than another. So, some disclaimers: if you want to make your own class counter, I will link the template in the description, and feel free to share them in the comments because this is a great way to cause discussion in the Rogue Lineage community. All of these opinions I'm voicing about each class is how I think they usually perform against others. Keep in mind when thinking of this, I thought about the average player. These are only my opinions, and keep in mind I'm ranking these off of how I view them. I encourage Rogue Lineage players of all experiences, maybe you're a new player starting out, or a maxed out Edict user, or an expert. Whatever you call yourself, I would like you to devise your own deductions about the individual classes and how they perform against each other. I want everyone to find their own playstyle and even make some wacky ones. By the end of the video, you will see what I think is the most versatile class, but that does not mean it's the strongest in game. Even if I say your class is hard countered by another, does not mean that you'll lose in a matchup. That's just what I feel about the kit that each class gets. I'll be leaving out Uber Bard because it's a cool concept, but it was neutered and just degraded by the devs. If this video does pretty well, I'll do another one for you guys talking about how ultra classes fare against each other, but it may prove a little bit difficult because of the artifacts. Throughout the video, I'll have some gameplay of some of my friends for each class just to highlight what, the classes can do. Alright, so let me explain how this chart works. At the top is your class, the one you're playing, and on the left is the class you're playing against. I have these little symbols I make to display which class is which, but I'm not the best artist, so I might have to explain them. On the right hand side of the chart is our key. The slightly transparent meat means the class is either a toss-up between the two or a soft counter. The bold meat is a hard counter or something that excels in fighting the specific class. Alright then, let's get into it. Right off the bat, we're starting off with the Abyss Walker, or Abyss Dancer, everybody's favorite Dark Souls inspired spinning boy. Okay, so you're noticing I decided that Abyss Walker does not do well against Sigil, and you may be surprised because of its no stun ability. I think that Sigil is very strong and is very good against slow classes and even has a lot of health. Next, looking at the strengths against Deep Knight. Even though Abyss does have less health than Deep Knight, it is able to do Spinning Soul right out of the Soul Siphon, and it's just a bad idea to pull the Spinning Death Tornado towards you. I mean, I know that Deep Knight can beat it, but Abyss Walker is quite scary at close range. Against Dragon Rider, on the ground, I think it's good when they use the no stun cloak to get close, but you won't be seeing many of these guys on the ground just walking around. After this, I think it's sort of a toss-up when Abyss fights a Faceless. If the Faceless hits a combo, it's over, but it's the same thing for an Abyss. I thought it would have more chance to kill Faceless just because it's not as tanky as other classes and has the same combo game. Lastly, I think they can get killed easily from a good combo from a Shinobi or Sage, but just because they can Wrathful Leap and negate the fall damage from both classes, it gives them a little bit of an edge. One thing I forgot to mention was I would assume that Abyss Walker does better than other classes against Monster Hunter because it can deal with Griffins fairly easily. They don't take much damage from these, so the class is just going to be useless. Okay, so Sigil, I believe, is one of the strongest combo classes in game. It takes around 20 minutes to learn, and it's not difficult to replicate the same combo. If an Abyss pulls up, this is where Sigils do well. They can get close to them, and they're able to get a good combo. Even if the Sigil is able to hit them, they just have so much health that I don't believe that they can win. An Abyss Walker can win against a Sigil, but most of the time I would believe that Sigil would win. This is similar to fighting other Sigils. I mean, whoever hits the first combo is going to be at an advantage. Another class I believe that Sigil does really well against is Faceless. The basic Sigil is able to one combo with Faceless and has an option of keeping him away with Ice Charge Blow. This isn't just because Sigil is a very good class, it's just that Faceless is not unique enough to its Ultra class and is predicted similarly. I don't know why they haven't added anything to this, but I think that two classes that need the most changes are Faceless and Dark Sigil. Well, anyway, again, like Faceless, Shinobi can get comboed pretty well by Sigils, but it is definitely more difficult to deal with because they're zooming around like little flies. I'd say that Shinobi wins this matchup, but Sigil can melt them if they get any breathing room. Lastly, Sigil versus Oni. This is kind of a toss-up and you need to have skill to really come over the top. A good Oni can run circles around a Sigil, but the Sigil can one combo it. It's just that the learning curve for Oni is harder than Sigil. Oni may be able to put out some good DPS against Sigils, but just because of their health being on the lower side, one combo from a Sigil is enough to get them gripped or put in a situation where they can't recover. I guess this goes without saying that Sigil's good against monsters. I mean, I don't really want to explain Monster Hunter as, I don't think it's a very good class. I think that too many classes have way too much DPS against these monsters, and it's just a worse version of a Necromancer. Moving on to what should have been called Leviathan, the Deep Knight. Alright, these spear-using monsters teach Sigils a lesson whenever they get in lancing range, which is about 1,000 miles. Being able to combo, and heal up when you're low does a number on these dudes because once they hit a tether or light piercer, they're gonna hit the suck move. This really doesn't apply to Abyss Walkers since they can spin right out of the suck move, but Sigils, they're in a bad spot if they're not as good as the Deep Knight. Again, Faceless is really a toss-up. They can combo Deep Knights, but it's really a toss-up on whoever gets the first hit. I don't really understand why they make this a feature. It's just, it is what it is. Most of the remaining classes are pretty squishy, so a competent Deep Knight could do very well. Unfortunately, in the case of Deep Knight, a good Oni could destroy it, but that's just if they're moving for. Alright, we're talking about Dslayer, huh? Dragon Rider is kind of hard to talk about because their matchups, they're always flying around. They do very well against slow classes when they're in the air, but can get bumped off their dragons to a couple things. If they're on the ground, they're not the strongest, but have potential for infinite combos. Sigil using blocker counter and monk shields, those are things that can knock them off their dragon. If they're using Justice Spears and that hits a monk that's monk shielding, or a Sigil that's blocking or countering, it will hit them off the dragon and they're going to be in a bad spot. That doesn't say they're going to die because they have fall negation, but still, it is not a place they want to be. Dragon Slayers do have the potential to infinite combo pretty much any class with their ragdoll capability, but it's not always a 100% thing that they will pull off. Lastly, I think that Dragon Slayers do very well against mages because they can slap them from such a long distance, and all of the spells that they can shoot they're not going to be able to hit. Okay, well, unless you're talking about the sniper move coming from Druid, which I've only seen that happen once, so it definitely is a thing. But if you're keeping your distance from a mage, most of their spells are not going to affect you. Alright, Dark Sigil Knight. Call me crazy, but the devs still need to buff this class. They don't need to buff it as much as it was on release, with all the curse stacks and whatever nonsense that was happening, but they need to make this class a little bit better. Dark Sigil Knight hard counters Abyss Walkers because your runes reduce a lot of damage, and you can combo them without letting them hit you. Abyss Walkers deal good damage from multiple hits, but Rune Berserk reduces a majority of the damage. Even if they have curse stacks, it's not going to do that much damage to them. Also, because Abyss Walkers are just generally slow, Tenebrous combos are easy to pull off against Abyss Walkers if they're not using Spinning Soul or doing anything. Another class that Dark Sigil Knight performs well against is Sigils, but faces the same problem as any other class. if they're hitting a combo, you're gonna be dead. The combo takes 20 minutes to learn as a Sigil Knight, and I don't believe that runes will save you, just because it does so much damage. The reason why Dark Sigil Knight performs well against sigils is if they can block, and if they're patient and wait for an opening, they're able to chase Tenebris them, and they're able to do a lot of damage with their M1s. That's really good because they're slower than other classes, and they are just able to snipe them with their M2s. It's just they have more options, but still, Sigil beats most classes in the game. Now moving on to some of the classes it is capable against but doesn't hard counter. Well, Dragon Sages can make quick work of Dark Sigil Knights, but their M2 breaks Monk Shield, which can be confusing to deal with for newer players if they don't know what they're doing or they're pressing their block instead of their Mana Shield. They could be put in a bad situation just because the M1s on a Dark Sigil Knight do backstab damage and are generally very good. And I think that Dark Sigil Knight does a lot of damage and has a lot of health, and does well against Shinobi. Due to the removal of Shinobi backstab damage, I think they just have way too much health for Shinobis to deal with. Before, the only issue for Shinobis was that it would take such a long time, your air combos, it would take multiple combos to get this guy down. But now that they have their removal of backstab damage on skills, it's just going to take a bit longer. This is just my experience. I'd say it's tough to deal with Dark Sigil Knights as a Shinobi. Lastly, Dark Sigil Knight can spam its M2s on mages when they're in the air, forcing them to come down or even use chase on them. The fact that they can deal with them from distance allows Dark Sigil to have the upper hand. Obviously, if there's a Necromancer and you're spawning your zombies on a Dark Sigil Knight, he's not going to be able to attack any of them, except with his spells. Like, single targets like this prove difficult for the Dark Sigil Knight, but when they're in a good spot, or they're fighting some class that doesn't deal enough damage, they become really strong. Alright, we're kind of moving on to the iffy classes. Faceless is one of the classes where you win if you hit the first part of the combo and your opponent is dead. I guess this is really a toss-up for many of its matchups, but it's difficult to say. One reason why I included that Faceless does well against Abyss is Abyss, Deep Knight, Sigil, and Dslayer on the ground, I guess, was that slow-moving targets are easier for them to deal with. I mean, Faceless can get comboed by any of these classes, but I think it's easier for them to deal with if they're slower. Also, all the way at the bottom, I put Dragon Sage just because it has pretty low HP and not many ways to escape a Faceless combo. Pretty much, Faceless is really a battle on who gets the first hit. This is very similar to Gaia Faceless, where you're just pressing random buttons on your keyboard, and if they hit, your opponent's dead. Not to slight anybody that plays Faceless, but I have no idea what you guys are doing, and I don't know how you don't have arthritis once you're done hitting the combo. Yes, we're moving on to Shinobi, one of my favorite classes. I believe that Shinobi hard counters Sigil and Deep Knight just due to the fact that they are slow. Both these classes have one-shot combos, but it is quite hard to pull off against a fly that's zooming around constantly. One thing, I guess, that would be a downside to Deep Knight is that you have to be on the same level as them. You have to be somewhat near them, same with Sigil, to grab them with your pulling moves. Obviously, it's easy to hit these moves, but if they are jumping around, grappling onto you, you're not going to have the best time aiming. Shinobis can do a lot against Facelesses because they don't have fall resistance or negation that other classes do, and they are quite squishy. It's hard for them to do any combo in the air if the Shinobi is zooming around, like grappling them, moving around, using agility. It's harder for them to hit them with their combos. I'm not saying that Faces can one-shot a Shinobi, but if they're being pulled around, if they're being moved around in the air, I believe that's very difficult to hit somebody with your Shadow Fan into Falling Darkness. And I guess at the end, Shinobis somewhat counter other Shinobis just due to fall resistance buff. It is kind of funny, it looks like two birds fighting when you see two Shinobis fight each other. Alright, we're looking at Spy, the Gun Boys. Two Spy, Abyss Walkers, and Sigil are slow-moving targets where they can just practice their ragdoll combo. I'm not gonna lie, Spy does very good DPS and is very good against these classes. They can also be disarmed, which puts them at a disadvantage and allows, the Spy to move around. If they need to retreat, all they have to do is disarm them and run away. So yeah, Spy can't disarm Dark Sigil Knight, but it can ragdoll combo. It's very easy, well, it's easier to escape their combos if they get pulled with Chase with their bomb jump, and they can do some pretty good damage. Overall, I believe that a Spy should win in the matchup against the Dark Sigil Knight, but it doesn't have too much counter in the class. I just think that it does very well. Another thing is that Spy can disarm and go crazy damage to Shinobi. They already have fall resistance, passive, bomb jump, and a double jump to reduce damage in the air. Shinobis, they're going to have a big issue with dealing with Spies if they know what they're doing. It's very difficult to combo somebody in the air if they can always negate your damage and be moving around. And all the way at the bottom it says Faceless can be disarmed. That's the only reason why it's lower on this list. I mean, Faceless is good and all, but actually, now that I'm thinking about it, if Faceless is disarmed, they get all their cooldowns back. I don't know. This could be a toss-up to me. Tell me what you guys think. I would say that Spy wins this, but that's just me. And lastly, Spy can counter some mages for bomb jumping them in the air and knocking them out of the sky, but I think that it counters Illusionist the best just due to the fall resistance buff that it gets. Some of the moves do less damage and it's easier for them to escape. We're moving on to the Fist classes. Okay, we're going to be talking about Dragon Sage. Dragon Sages, like Oni, hard counter mages. Without mana, they are freshies. I mean, if you have zombies and monsters, you could have more of a chance, but for real, they get one comboed. Somebody's trying to attack you, and you get hit with that lightning punch. You're not going to be able to do anything. Dragon Sage counter DK, but they are a lot faster. Dsages counter Deep Knight, and they're a lot faster, but can one combo a Deep Knight. But if they aren't careful, the same thing can happen to them. I actually saw LQ, one of the best Dsages I know. He got comboed by a Deep Knight. That doesn't really matter how good your skill level is. Deep Knights can combo. Dragon Sages counter D-Rider by disabling their mana and are able to Monk Shield Justice Spears and knock them off their dragon. If they're really good, it's kind of a toss-up between these two classes, but most of the K matchups, the average Dragon Sage is able to use their basic tools against the D-Rider, especially on the ground. Even though Dragon Sages don't inherently counter all of the classes in the game, it is a very good class in my opinion, and you're able to pull off some pretty nutty combos. Oni is one of my favorite classes and by far one of the most versatile in games. First of all, Oni slaps Dslayers. Most of their moves are able to be dodged, and if they are on the ground, there isn't much stopping an Oni from just walking up and hitting them with a demon flip. Due to the fact that they are pretty slow, Oni can use Black Flames on them and prevent them from being able to call Drake. In my opinion, Oni soft counters Dark Sigil Knight in a high school matchup. The win really depends on the skill of each player, but if both players are average, the Oni can disable mana from the Dark Sigil Knight and prevent them from popping runes or using spells in their combos. Next, I believe that Oni hard counters Sages. Just the class itself counters a Dragon Sage. Average Dragon Sages will Monk Shield frequently and can get their guard broken very easily to a Oni. And without mana punches, spells, and brand combos, it is very hard for them to do much. Some other things that soft counter classes just by having mana cancelling capabilities are Faceless dashes, disabling mana on Spies, and obviously mages. If a Faceless doesn't have his dashes, then they can't get around that fast and be able to be comboed by the Oni. Obviously, if they one-shot the Oni, that isn't really a problem, but without the movement option, it limits to them, and if they don't have confidence and they want to run away, it's going to be harder for them. Oni can also disable Spies to some degree, because some combos rely on spells. Not everybody does use spells, so I just decided to leave it off the list. Lastly, mages have a tough time dealing with Onis. I know some of them say, just press F, and they can't do anything, but if they get hit at any time with Black Flames, it neuters their entire class. Also, Oni can get some nice buffs from consuming flames if monsters or shriekers are spawned, which allows them to survive a bit longer. Oni counters a lot of classes and is quite strong, but if you get in a combo, they're gonna get shredded. Well, besides the Zen and Regalia Onis, then that just means, better call backup. Now we're talking about the mages. Druid was super strong on release, but I think it got nerfed pretty hard with the removal of iframes on its teleport. They are able to click on the map and click around on the map and just teleport, and they do best against slow targets like Sigil and Abyss Walker. I think that Deep Knight and Dark Sigil do perform better than Sigil and Abyss Walker just because they have range, but they're not much stronger than their other sword counterparts. Druid is also pretty strong against these tankier classes just because it does percent damage. The more health you have, the more damage you're going to take. I also added on here that I think that Shinobi gets a bit countered by Druid because in the past Druid could teleport out of their combos in the air. I don't know if that's a thing, you guys are going to have to tell me, but I just put it on there. I don't think that Druid is that strong of a class, but I did see my friend Apshalt snipe a D-Rider off his dragon from super far away. So I think that's good enough for me to put them in as a soft counter. Next, we're looking at the second mage, the Illusionist. They still do well against slow classes, and can deal pretty nice damage to those that don't have fall negation. Abyss Walker is a slow-moving class, but if its Wrathful Leaf hits the Illusionist, he can knock him down or just negate fall damage caused by the Illusionist spells. The reason I think that Illusionist hard counters Sigil and Deep Knights is just due to the fact that they need to be on the same level as their target when they use their pulls. If you want to pull your target closer, you're going to have to be looking them straight in the eye. I mean, it's not impossible to hit, but it's quite unlikely for an Illusionist to put themselves in a position where they can't get grabbed. All the way at the bottom, we have how Illusionist acts towards other mages. They obviously counter each other because they're unable to be affected by mind spells, and can do pretty good damage towards monsters or shriekers with their AoE slam attacks. All the way at the end, we have both variants for Necromancer, the Uber Necro, and Monster Hunter. I'm not sure why you would want to be Monster Hunter, but in my opinion, Necromancer is just better. The Necro is good against slow classes like Abyss Walkers, where the Monster Hunter is not. Tanky classes do not fear rushing into a Griffin because they don't deal curse stacks. Seriously, Necromancer is just better. If you're a Necromancer, you can win against every single class in the game just by spawning your monsters, okay? It doesn't matter if they get hit. It's like ABA. If you're playing Law and you spawn a bubble, just the fact of your bubble being there or your zombies being there gives the enemy fear. They're not going to want to approach you because if they get hit with the curse stack, that's going to do a lot of their health. It's just the fact that Monster Hunter has the capability to, spawn gore pigs that do some good damage, but it is not comparable to how Necromancers can run away and spawn these bomb zombies. Necromancer pretty much has the capability to run all day and kill any class with his Shriekers, but I think these classes are really good against single target opponents such as Facelesses or Shinobis, because they can't really they can't deal with a group of enemies at a time. Phew, we're finally done. Crazy how long it took. Well, that was my opinion on how each class can counter and deal with other classes. Again, these are just the ways that they can deal with other classes, but it's not a fact of just winning or losing in these matchups. I want people to be able to make their own decision on how their playstyle will be, and to not be afraid to ping me in the Rogue Lineage Discord or comment your own counter sheet. The template will be in the description. Well, I guess if you want to hear what I think the best classes are, I'll have to tell you. I think that Spy, Dragon, Sage, and Oni, as well as Necromancer, are very versatile and have very good options. Every single class in the game is good, such as I believe that Sigil Knight and Dragon Slayer are also good, but I don't think they're as versatile as other classes. They do very good damage and are able to run away, but I just think that the Oni's Black Flames and Spy, it just does so much damage and is able to escape a lot of combos, puts them up higher than the list. Well, if you want to hear what, my favorite class is, I would have to say Oni. Yes, Oni is one of the best. No, not that type. This one, silly.